On my wedding day, I stood in my dress staring at the two front row seats labeled Mom and Dad still empty, while a nervous buzz rippled through the guests. Then someone gasped. A woman near the aisle lifted her phone, the screen glowing with an Instagram story of my parents and my sister Sienna laughing at a rooftop brand event in Los Angeles. Same day, same hour. When the music for the father-daughter dance started, the room froze with me. Shame pressed down like a spotlight I never asked for. But no one knew my parents had already planned to pretend they never received my invitations, and that this was only the first lie. Before I go on, tell me where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by someone who was supposed to love you. Stories like this don't come from strangers, they come from family. And if you felt that sting even once, stay with me. Because what happened next shattered every illusion I had left. I grew up in a house where love wasn't something you received, it was something you competed for. Our kitchen always looked warm in photos, with lemon candles burning and sunlight hitting the white cabinets just right. But warmth in that house was a stage thing, like a set built for someone else's show. Most nights, Mom hummed along to whatever pop song Sienna liked that week while setting the table. I'd sit quietly, folding my napkin, hoping for a moment, any moment where she'd look at me the way she looked at my sister. It never came. One night when I was 9, the scent of garlic chicken filled the kitchen. Mom placed a plate piled high in front of Sienna, then used the same tongs to drop a single dry piece on mine. Eat slowly, Riley, she said, already drifting toward my sister. Sienna has auditions this weekend. Protein matters. I watched Sienna chew confidently, her leg bouncing under the table like she owned the world. I swallowed hard, tasting nothing. I didn't know it then, but moments like that were sharpening themselves into the emotional edges I'd carry for decades. Another memory. One of those suffocating Washington summers when the AC died and the air felt thick enough to chew. I just won a school science competition, clutching the certificate like a lifeline. My hair stuck to my forehead, sweat making my t-shirt cling to my back. Dad walked in, loosened his tie, glanced at the paper, and said, "Nice job," like he was commenting on the weather. Then he called out to Mom, "Linda, did you see Sienna's new headshots? We should frame one." My certificate wilted in my hand like a dying flower. The next morning, Sienna's glossy photo hung above the fireplace. My award disappeared into a drawer that smelled like rubber bands and old batteries. I told myself it didn't matter, but it carved deeper than I knew. By middle school, my role in the Carter family had solidified. I was the helper, the quiet fixer, the daughter who didn't require attention. That's what they told people anyway. I learned how to braid Sienna's hair before her early morning photo shoots, how to steam her dresses so they fell in perfect lines, how to stand outside the camera frame so I wouldn't ruin the lighting. Sunrise shoots smelled like dew and plastic makeup kits, and while Mom fussed with blush brushes, I held a reflector board so long my arms trembled. Only Sienna's glow mattered. I didn't know it then, but every time I stepped out of the frame, I stepped out of my own life a little more. High school made everything worse. Sienna was the girl everyone wanted to sit with. The girl who took perfect photos on the first try. The girl who floated through hallways like the protagonist of a teenage movie. I found my world in the hum of computers, in lines of code that always made sense even when nothing else did. My room smelled of dust and old textbooks, but it felt more like home than the actual house ever had. The night I won the state coding championship, I practically floated home, metal cold against my skin, heart pounding with pride. But the house was dim, lit only by the blue glow of the TV. Mom and Dad sat on the couch watching a replay of a morning show segment. Sienna smiling brightly, talking about her newest magazine feature. They cheered when her photo appeared on screen. "I won," I said quietly, lifting the medal. Mom didn't look away. "That's great, honey. Keep it up." The medal suddenly felt heavier, sharper, like it knew exactly how invisible I was. I swallowed the sting and told myself I'd get used to it. I didn't know it then, but all the skills I poured into helping Sienna editing, coding, organizing, analyzing would become the exact tools I'd use to dismantle every lie my parents built later. And I also didn't know the quiet resentment I buried would return years later, not as anger, but as clarity. College was the first place where I breathed without feeling watched. My dorm was tiny peeling paint, a heater that rattled like it was coughing, a window that jammed every winter, but it was the first space that belonged to me. No curated candles, no staged warmth, No reminders that I should stand behind someone else's glow. But every holiday break dragged me back into orbit, back into a house where my worth shrank the moment I stepped through the door. One Thanksgiving stands out. Rain hammered the roof so loudly it drowned out the TV. The kitchen windows fogged from the heat of the oven. Cinnamon, nutmeg, and baked apples made the whole house smell like something out of a commercial. I sat at the counter peeling potatoes, my fingers pruning in the warm water. Mom was arranging a charcuterie board, not for guests, but for Sienna's brand aesthetic. Sienna swept in wearing a cream sweater, posing effortlessly as if the world existed to light her just right. "Mom, should I tag the bakery when I post this?" she asked, holding her phone at a perfect angle. Mom laughed, brushing her hair back. "Of course, sweetheart." "Oh, Riley, step out of the frame. Your shadow ruins the shot." The chair scraped loudly as I moved. They didn't notice. They never did. Later that night, Sienna unwrapped a designer purse, while I got wool socks from Target. I smiled, because that's what I was trained to do. But inside, something small and sharp turned over. I didn't know it then, but those tiny sharp edges were forming a blade I'd eventually use. I met Noah a year after college. We were both attending a product demo, him relaxed and observant, me gripping a notebook like a shield. There was a steadiness to him, the kind you only see in people who've never had to fight for a place at the table. He asked thoughtful questions. He listened. He noticed when my hand shook, when my voice dipped, when I flinched at the sound of my phone buzzing. The first time he visited my parents' house, I watched his expression shift in real time. Mom wrapped Sienna in a long hug. Dad peppered her with questions about brand deals and modeling contracts. Noah mentioned my recent promotion, my biggest career step at the time, and Dad said, "That's great," before turning back to ask Sienna if she'd secured a sponsorship yet. Driving home that night, the city lights blurred in the rain. Noah tapped his thumb on the steering wheel, thinking, "Does it always feel like that?" He finally asked. "Like what?" My voice sounded too small. "Like you're invisible in your own family." The truth of it hit me so hard I couldn't answer. I stared out the window, watching headlights smear across wet pavement, and felt something in me crack open. I didn't know it then, but he'd become the first person who ever looked at me and didn't see a supporting character. Over the next few years, my relationship with my parents didn't collapse, it eroded. Quietly, politely, like driftwood losing pieces of itself every time a wave hit. I'd send them updates about my job. Mom responded with heart emojis. I'd tell them about my engagement. They'd ask if Sienna was free the same weekend. I didn't realize I'd been shrinking myself for so long until Noah kept offering me space I didn't know how to fill. When he proposed fairy lights glowing across our living room, his hands shaking the tiniest bit, I felt a warmth I'd never associated with the word family. But reality crashed back fast. The moment we began planning the wedding, Mom insisted we avoid dates that clashed with Sienna's events. Dad suggested toning down the decor so it wouldn't overshadow my sister's future wedding. Sienna even sent me a list of poses for better photos, not for me, but to make sure she looked good if she happened to be in the background. Each request was a small cut. I kept bleeding silently, because that's what I'd always done. But I didn't know it then. Each cut was pushing me closer to the moment when I'd finally stop apologizing for taking up space. And when that moment came, it would tear everything wide open. The conflicts didn't erupt in one dramatic moment. They built slowly, the way a sinkhole forms beneath a neighborhood, quiet, invisible, inevitable. Looking back, I can trace every crack, every warning sign, every moment I should have seen what was coming. The first crack opened at our engagement dinner. We'd booked a small restaurant with soft lighting and a jazz duo playing in the corner. I wore a navy dress, Noah said made my eyes look brighter. I walked in expecting a toast or a hug, maybe even a moment where my parents acknowledged my future. Instead, Mom brushed past me and wrapped her arms around Sienna. "Oh, sweetheart, that sweater is perfect on you," she gushed, smoothing a non-existent wrinkle. Then she turned to me. "Riley, you look nice." Nice. The word people use when they can't find anything polite to say. Throughout dinner, the smell of garlic butter filled the air. Glasses clinked, people laughed. But the only celebration on that table belonged to Sienna. Mom raised her glass. "To my girl, who just got invited to a Fashion Week preview," Dad added. "And her brand hit 200,000 followers this month. That's real momentum." Noah's jaw tightened. "We're celebrating our engagement tonight." Dad barely blinked. Of course. But you know how important timing is in Sienna's career. I stabbed a piece of chicken I didn't taste. That night, I learned something. My engagement wasn't an event, it was a scheduling inconvenience. That crack widened during invitation week. I sat at our dining table with stacks of envelopes, the room lit softly by our floor lamp. Noah typed addresses into a spreadsheet while I wrote each name by hand. My fingers cramped, ink smudged on my palm, but I wanted every detail perfect. I mailed every envelope with tracking, sent digital invitations, logged confirmations. 3 days later, Sienna texted, "Did you send physical invites or just email?" "Mom hates email." I replied, "Sent both. Delivered March 10. Email opened March 12." She responded instantly. "Weird." They said nothing arrived. Maybe resend? My stomach dropped. I clicked the tracking link. Green checkmark. Delivered. Signed. Noah leaned over. "Don't let them twist this." "They already are," I whispered. I didn't know yet that this lie would become their favorite weapon. 2 weeks before the wedding, the pressure tightened. I was at work, the hallway buzzing under harsh fluorescent lights, when Mom called. Her tone was sharp. "Riley, your father and I never received your invitation." My heart sank. "Mom, you did. I have the delivery confirmation." "Well, I checked the mailbox. Nothing. Maybe you typed the address wrong." I triple-checked everything. She sighed dramatically, the way she always did when she needed to play the martyr. "You need to stop being so dramatic about minor mistakes." "It wasn't a mistake." Her voice hardened. "If you don't want us there, just say it." The fluorescent lights flickered. My grip tightened around my phone. "I do want you there." She hung up. The cracks split deeper. The day before the wedding, it widened into something uglier. I was steaming my dress, lavender mist rising into warm air, when my phone buzzed. "Sienna again. Don't forget photos with Dad's side tomorrow." Great networking. No congratulations. No excitement. Just instructions. I stared at the message, chest tightening. The steamer hissed beside me like it was mocking me. Noah walked in, saw my expression, and took the phone gently from my hand. "Riley," he said softly, "this isn't normal." The truth of those words hurt more than anything. Then came the wedding. 2 empty chairs. 2 bouquets waiting for people who never planned to come. 2 satin bows tied with a kind of hope I shouldn't have had. When Thomas Noah's dad stepped forward for the father-daughter dance, my throat tightened in a way I can't describe. His hand was steady, warm, the kind of steady warmth I'd never received from my own father. Guests whispered behind their hands. A woman wiped her eyes. I kept smiling, so no one would see the crack forming inside me. I didn't know it yet. This, right here, was the moment the story they built and the truth I lived would collide. After the wedding, after the last champagne glass was cleared, after Noah and I crawled into bed exhausted and aching, my phone lit up with Mom's name. "We feel terrible," she said. "You should have reminded us." "Mom, you opened the email. That must have been spam." Dad replied to it. He probably didn't read it. And the physical invitation? Well, maybe you shouldn't rely on technology. You know I prefer paper. It was paper. Silence. Heavy. Calculated. Then she asked, in a voice dripping with innocence she didn't own, "Why are you doing this to us?" To us. As if I'd betrayed them. I didn't know it then, but that question marked the exact point where the ground under our family began to crumble. The cracks didn't slow down, they multiplied. The morning after that call, my phone buzzed nonstop with messages from relatives I barely spoke to. Each notification felt like a pebble thrown at my window. "Your mom says this is a misunderstanding. Your parents are devastated. Why didn't you follow up with them?" Every text carried the same tone. Gentle blame wrapped in fake sympathy. I sat at our kitchen island, hands wrapped around a mug of cold coffee, staring at the screen. Noah leaned against the counter, arms folded, watching me the way people watch storms forming on the horizon. "They're building a narrative," he said. "And they have an audience." I whispered. That evening, my Aunt Valerie called. She always had a soft voice, like she was afraid to disturb the air around her. "Honey," she began, "your mother is heartbroken. She told me she only found out about your wedding the night before." My chest tightened. "Val, I have proof they received the invitations." "Well, your mother says she never lies about family." That line, Mom's favorite shield. Before I could respond, she added, And your dad said the email must have gone to spam. Spam. The message he responded to. When the call ended, the kitchen felt colder than before, like someone had opened a window to let the winter in. But the next hit came harder. Dad emailed Noah. Not me. Noah. The subject line read, family obligations and responsibilities. Noah opened it at the table, the glow of the laptop reflecting in his eyes. With each line he read, his expression hardened. As Riley's future husband, it's important you guide her back to reason. She's creating conflict during a crucial time for Sienna's career. Family unity must come before personal feelings. When he finished, he shut the laptop gently, like he was closing a coffin. This isn't unity, he said quietly. This is manipulation. I felt something in me twist, so sharply it almost made me dizzy. The next night, while Noah was cooking, onion sizzling in a pan, Aunt Valerie texted again. Your mom says you're overwhelmed. She's worried your mental state isn't stable. She said you're imagining things. The phone slipped in my hand. Noah turned from the stove, spatula still in midair. They're attacking your sanity now? I read the text again. The words blurred. I whispered, I'm tired of being rewritten. A moment later, the onions burned, smoke curling upward like a warning. Noah shut off the stove and opened a window. Cold air rushed in, but it didn't cool the heat building under my skin. The next morning brought another blow. I found a cream-colored envelope at our door, thick and smooth like wedding stationery. My name was written in Sienna's perfect influencer handwriting, loops and curls too pretty to be sincere. Inside was a check for $2,000 and a note. For your dress plus travel, Mom and Dad will tell everyone you had scheduling conflicts. Just show up and smile. For the family image. Sienna. I stared at it so long the ink seemed to waver. They're trying to buy you, Noah said when I handed it to him. They're trying to buy my silence, I replied. He placed the check back on the table like it was toxic. 2 days later, I was at work, walking down a hallway that smelled like fresh carpet and printer toner, when my phone buzzed. A cousin I barely knew had sent a screenshot from the Carter family group chat. Mom's message at the top. We had to miss Riley's wedding for a major family commitment. Please support us during this difficult misunderstanding. Sienna underneath. Don't stir this up. Riley exaggerates when she's emotional. Then a comment from another relative. Didn't Mark confirm he got the invite in March? Silence. Long, sharp silence. Then Mom finally replied. That email must have been about something else. Something inside me cracked. Noah had to steady me when I showed him the screenshot. They're losing control, he said, and they're scrambling. But the worst was still coming. Late that night, my phone rang. An unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Riley? Mom's voice. Soft, trembling, almost believable. You're tearing this family apart, she said. I stayed silent. You know how fragile your sister is. Her wedding is weeks away. People are canceling because of this drama you're creating. I'm not creating anything, I said. If you don't show up, she snapped, sweetness dropping away like a mask, don't expect to be welcomed back into this family. The threat hung in the air. Heavy, sticky, rotting. For the first time, I didn't shrink. I felt nothing but clarity. I ended the call without a word. That was the moment the old version of me died. And the part they'd never expected, the part that didn't fear them anymore, began to breathe. The morning of Sienna's wedding felt nothing like mine. Mine had been soft, warm sun, dew on the grass, air gentle enough to lift my veil. Hers began with a sky the color of bruised metal. Wind scraped the car windows as Noah and I drove north, away from her venue and toward the mountains. We didn't talk. We didn't need to. The road twisted through dark evergreens, their branches trembling like they could feel the tension too. My phone kept buzzing inside my backpack short, frantic vibrations that sounded like someone knocking, begging to be let in. I ignored them. At the trailhead, the air hit us cold, sharp, honest. Pine needles crunched under our boots. Every breath stung my lungs in a way that felt real, unfiltered, clean. We hiked in silence, climbing higher, letting the world below shrink to something that didn't belong to us anymore. Halfway up, my phone buzzed again, then nonstop. Noah glanced at me. You don't have to check it. I know. But curiosity dug its claws in. At the ridge, the world opened, mountains unfolding in layers of blue and violet, snow dusting their peaks, clouds drifting like slow-moving ghosts. I finally took my phone out. The screen lit up with a wall of notifications. 27 missed calls, 49 texts, screenshots, photos, voicemails, 3 emails with the same subject. You need to see this. The first message wasn't from mom or dad, not even Sienna. It was from Aunt Valerie. Riley, something is happening at the wedding. Then a photo. I tapped it open. Sienna's venue, an elegant barn, glowing under rows of string lights, looked almost hollow. Half the tables were untouched, place cards still pristine. Clusters of relatives stood arguing near the bar. Expressions sharp, tense, disappointed. I zoomed in. At the far end of the room, Mom was crying, mascara-streaked, lips twisted. Dad argued with Uncle Joe, his face red, hands slicing the air like he was defending a case in court. Sienna stood in her lace gown, arms thrown up, screaming something I couldn't hear. Her groom hovered helplessly beside her, eyes wide. My chest tightened, not with guilt, but disbelief. Another message came through, a screenshot from the Carter group chat. Uncle Joe, didn't Mark confirm he got the invite months ago? A pause. Then another relative. So you did get it. Mom's reply popped up at the bottom. That email must have been about something else. Even through a screen, I felt the lie crack. Not just fail shatter. Another image arrived. Sienna clutching her skirt, makeup smudging, shouting at Mom while a bridesmaid tried to pull her aside. Guests were leaving in groups, chairs scraping, doors opening and closing. Then my phone buzzed again. Sienna. I hesitated, then answered. What did you do? She screamed, her voice fractured, high, brittle. Half the guests are gone. Everyone's talking about your stupid timeline. Aunt Marie told people you were telling the truth. Do you understand what you've done? I looked out at the mountains. Sienna, I didn't send anything to anyone. Yes, you did. She snapped. You want to ruin everything because you're jealous? You've always been jealous. No, I said calmly. I'm just done lying. There was a beat of silence. Then, she slipped completely. We had a brand event that day. She spat. A real opportunity. You knew that. You could have changed your date. You made it impossible for us. And now you're ruining my wedding because you want attention. Attention. The word hit like a slap I didn't feel anymore. That brand event, I said quietly, was the exact hour I walked down the aisle. So what? She shot back. You can't know how busy we are. You're always expecting too much. We, the Holy Trinity, Mom, Dad, Sienna. Noah stepped closer beside me, tension radiating from his body, but I raised a hand. I needed this moment. You really believe the world revolves around you? I said, voice steady. You really think my wedding was a personal inconvenience? Her breath hitched. You ruined my day. No, I replied, calm as the wind brushing my face. The truth ruined your day. Why are you doing this? She choked out. Why are you punishing us? I looked back at the mountains, vast, quiet, unwavering. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm freeing myself. Silence. Not the angry kind. Not the defensive kind. A silence that felt like a door closing gently but permanently. The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly, a strange weight lifting off me like I'd been wearing someone else's guilt for years, and finally dropped it. Noah's arm wrapped around my waist. You okay? He asked. I nodded. For the first time since this started, yes. The wind swept through the ridge, cold but freeing. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't look. I didn't need to. Whatever fell apart in that barn wasn't mine to hold anymore. My mother's tears. My father's excuses. My sister's meltdown. Their collapsing image. It all belonged to them. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in molten gold, I understood something with bone-deep certainty. I wasn't walking away from my family. I was finally walking toward myself. 2 years later. The dust had settled, but the echoes hadn't. Healing didn't look like a movie montage. It looked like slow mornings, baby bottles drying beside the sink, and a little house in Olympia where the floors creaked when the sun hit them. Noah and I built a life that didn't require permission, and in this life, my son Jamie slept against my chest most afternoons, warm and trusting, his tiny breath soft against my skin. There was no Carter presence here, no rehearsed disappointment, no silent judgments, no narratives I had to shrink myself to fit. One evening, while rocking Jamie in the dim light of the living room, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Old instincts twitched, but I looked anyway. Riley, I know you had a son. You cannot keep a grandchild from his grandmother. This is cruel. Call me Mom. For a moment, an old version of me flickered the girl who twisted herself into knots for their approval. The one who mistook guilt for love. The one who thought silence was safer than truth. But that girl was gone. I looked around the room. The framed photos of Noah's parents holding Jamie with tears in their eyes, the shelf with baby books and tiny socks, the life we built without the Carter script. And just like that, the guilt evaporated. I blocked the number with one tap. My hand didn't shake. Later that night, after Jamie fell asleep, I opened my laptop. Among routine emails was a new message with a subject line that tightened my chest. From Sienna. Subject: I need a favor. I clicked. I know you don't trust me, but I need help. Things aren't what they look like. If you talk to me, I'll tell you everything. A chill rippled through me, not fear, not dread, but recognition. Noah walked in, towel around his neck. Everything okay? I closed the laptop softly. Something's beginning, I said. Because her message wasn't an apology. It was a fracture, and fractures always lead somewhere. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, make sure you hit subscribe. Stories like mine don't end the moment you walk away. They change, they twist, they reveal things you never saw coming. Sometimes peace isn't the absence of conflict, but the strength to step out of someone else's shadow. And trust me, what Sienna hinted at, that wasn't closure. It was the start of a new chapter, one I never expected to face. So stay with me. There's more to this story than anyone in the Carter family ever imagined.